Right. Welcome, folks. Thanks for joining us in Valley Stewardship's 20th annual meeting. We appreciate your attending. Please, if you have questions during the presentation, go ahead and put them in the chat box and we'll sort those questions out. We do have a question and answer session later in the evening. Yeah, I'm Tom Lukens, Board Chair of Valley Stewardship Network. Been involved now, I believe, for 10 years or so. It's been a pleasure. I involved with lots of conservation work on my property here, and I enjoy working with others on the same. So it's kind of a good fit for me, and it's been a pleasure. So it's also been a pleasure working with Shelley Brenneman, and Shelley is our executive director, and I'd like to hand it over to Shelley right now. She's been a wonderful person to work with.
Thank you, Tom. It's been great working with you too and the whole VSN team. Welcome, VSN members. This is our first virtual meeting ever, so bear with us as we move through this new experience together. I'm coming to you live here at the VSN office, 110 South Main Street in the Conservation Connections building. We're all going to introduce ourselves a little bit tonight. I grew up in rural Iowa and came to Wisconsin after living in Alaska for a long time. My background is in natural resources and sustainable agriculture. For the past 30 years, my life's work has focused on working lands conservation, which highlights the caring land and water stewardship of farmers and community members and shows that agricultural production and ecosystem health can go hand in hand. That is the work that brought me to VSN, where I've enjoyed working now for almost 8 years. Our work at VSN changed a lot this year, but we stayed very busy out in the fields and streams. One big change was that our usual outreach workshops and programs were not possible. So we captured many more photos and videos of our outdoor projects so that we can share them with folks at home. We initiated a new social media presence with the help of Carolyn Zick from Bad Axe Enterprises, who is also our technical wizard tonight. So thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn compiled many of our social media offerings into this short video that summarizes our 2020 programs, and we'll show that to you now. all the great work that the staff did this summer. It's my privilege now to thank the Rooted Spoon for yet another great collaboration and for their generous donation from each meal purchased tonight. And also to Thomas Wise, who produced those incredibly amazing maps that are for sale, and he's donating the proceeds of those tonight to VSN as well. Thank you, Thomas. The Scandinavian meal that was prepared by the Rooted Spoon tonight for pickup was so delicious, and it highlighted our regional heritage with food sourced from farms in the Kickapoo and neighboring watersheds. The meal featured St. Bridget's Meadows from Coon Creek watershed, Harmony Valley Farm and barred bread from the Bad Axe River watershed, food from Tamsin Morgan's farm in the West Fork watershed, food from Driftless Organics from Tanner Creek watershed, and in the Kickapoo watershed, farms including Organic Valley, Keewaydon Farm, Mastodon Valley Farm, Aspen Farm, and the American Hazelnuts, and also Down Home Farm is just inside the West Fork watershed. And many of you who got the meal tonight were able to get a copy of the map of all of the producers right here in the Kickapoo and neighboring watersheds and a couple outside of our region, but amazing, delicious food from lots of farmers working together. And really here at VSN, we thank all farmers in our region for providing healthy food while also taking care of our land and water. I want to make a particular note tonight of the bird-friendly beef that we had in the meal from Mastodon Valley Farms. Jason Vitas, who's our bird-friendly farming consultant, is working with several farmers to promote grazing and haying practices that support successful grassland bird nesting. As part of our on-farm stewardship research program, Jason is working with farmer Jim Munch from the Coon Creek watershed. Jim is demonstrating that providing nesting refuge paddocks within his rotational grazing system is helpful for grassland bird reproduction. Jason conducted breeding bird surveys at Jim's farm this summer, and he quantified how grassland birds were utilizing the refuge, and he reports that the system is a big win for grassland birds. We'll work more with Jim to determine how to develop markets for bird-friendly beef so that farmers that set aside land for nesting refuges can get a premium for their beef to offset the costs of birds utilizing some of their grazing land. On the hay side, we already know that waiting until around July 15th for harvesting hay, for first cutting of harvesting hay, is a huge benefit for breeding birds. We also know that this lowers hay quality and to some degree production to wait that long. Lucky for us, Jim is a pioneer in late cut hay as well, and over the years has had success in planting certain seed mixes that allow late cut hay to have good nutritional aspects. And we are putting together a bird-friendly hay recipe to pass along to hay producers who are interested in exploring bird-friendly hay production. For bird-friendly farming to succeed in a big way, we need it to work for both farmers and the birds. Thank you, VSN members and the Rooted Spoon for supporting this initiative tonight. We'll now go to our recorded slideshow that features our outstanding staff providing an annual report of our work this year. So I'll hand it back over to Carolyn to start the slideshow.
It's my pleasure to begin the slideshow, first by introducing our caring, talented, and dedicated staffing consultant. Everyone here at VSN works part-time, but together we synergize our efforts and make an efficient and productive team. Our work really didn't slow down with COVID. Our staffing consultants are resilient and creative, and we're able to adjust our work quickly. Our supportive board members provided key guidance that was much appreciated. Tonight's program will show you all the great projects that occurred during this unusual year. I want to take a moment tonight to share my gratitude and respect for the entire VSN team. For all your inspiring efforts this year, thank you. And for all of you, our members, thank you for supporting this important stewardship work. And a special thanks tonight to the Rooted Spoon for tonight's collaboration. We hope for many more. Valley Stewardship Network's staff includes Shelley, myself as Executive Director, Nan Marshall, Membership, Communications, and Operations Coordinator, Danny Heisler-Woodeel, our Regenerative Agriculture Outreach Coordinator, which is a new position, Matt Emsley, Conservation on Tap and Landowner Outreach Coordinator, Dr. Monique Hassman, Watershed Planner, Dave Creer, Water Quality, Native Plantings, and Citizen Science Coordinator. Bryce Spann, Water Action Volunteers Coordinator. Jerry Pedretti, Finance Coordinator. And Tom Lukens, who is not only VSN's board chair, but dedicates many hours as a volunteer for VSN projects. Our consultants include Jason Vitas, Bird Friendly Farm Coordinator, Jim Munch, Whole Farm Stewardship Planner, Dennis Rooney, Grazing Planner, Robert Warren, Strategic Planner, and Carolyn Zick from Bad Axe Enterprises, who is our social media consultant and the wizard behind the curtain tonight to help us with this Zoom presentation. Thank you, Carolyn. Since the year 2000, in the Kickapoo and neighboring watersheds, Valley Stewardship Network protects our land and waters through research, education, and community empowerment. Yes, this was our 20th anniversary year. Not the best year for a party, but we're hoping that next year we can celebrate the first 20 years and kick off the next 20 years. So stay tuned. VSN programs include water quality research, citizen science, watershed councils, the Tainter Creek Grazing and Water Quality Project, Farming with Prairies, bird-friendly farming and habitat enhancement, youth and community education, GIS mapping and modeling, and watershed planning. We want to welcome 2 new employees this year. First, Danny Heisler-Woodeel, our Regenerative Agriculture Outreach Coordinator. As we've greatly expanded our work, working with farmers in the region, we so appreciate Danny's skills. And she's been a great member of the team this year. Danny has had a lifelong interest in production agriculture and its relationship to the environment. She credits her passion for agricultural diversity to her and her family's life's work as farmers and ranchers. From a young age, Danny had the opportunity to understand and assist in beef, dairy, poultry, crop, and vegetable production, including peppermint and spearmint. Danny attended University of Wisconsin's River Falls, earning a Bachelor of Science degree focused on animal science, agronomy, and food science. While staying rooted in agriculture, Danny has had the opportunity to work across conventional, organic, and large and small-scale farming operations of all types. Throughout all of her education and professional experiences, Danny has consistently valued diversity in farm operations and the robust effect they have on the communities which they support. In 2014, she and her husband moved to the Viroqua area where they live, farm, and enjoy all the recreational benefits the Tainter Creek watershed has to offer. Danny is active in the community through the board and leadership positions in local organizations, as well as positions representing statewide efforts. Welcome, Danny. Another new employee who is also a familiar face is Bryce Spann, who's the new Water Action Volunteers Coordinator. Bryce lives in rural Viroqua on a small homestead with his wife, Jenny, daughter, Cece, and son, Hugh. The whole family has been involved with VSN since they moved to the area in 2005. First with stream monitoring and continuing with other VSN initiatives such as the Gleaning Project, mussel monitoring, and birding outings. Bryce served on the VSN board from 2013 to 2015. Bryce has worked in education as an elementary and high school teacher. He really enjoys connecting youth with the outdoors and has assisted VSN with the Conservation Day events at Sidey Hollow and with Family Fun and Tainter Creek Stream Day events. Bryce coordinates Water Action Volunteers and assists with water quality research. Welcome back, Bryce. We want to take a moment to give a special thanks to our partners. We have more than 30 partners that we collaborate with from the local, county, state, and federal level. And in this time, we really value the collaboration of all of our partners and know that none of this work would be possible without all of us working together. Our current grant funding includes the Pasture Project at Wallace Center at Windrock International, Fishers and Farmers Partnership for the Upper Mississippi River Basin, the North Central Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, the Laird Norton Family Foundation, and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Here are our income and expenses from last year, just for comparison, 2019 to 2020. We are right about the 196,500 mark for income and slightly less than that for expenses. This year, we've increased our programs and our staff, as you can see, and our income is $267,002. And 78% of that is coming from grants and contracts. 10% is coming from contributions, and we know that that is a little uneven, and we'll do better in the future in trying to balance our grant funding with our contribution funding. Our expenses this year are $265,400, and that's fairly evenly distributed between meetings and program expenses, as well as payroll expenses. Our payroll expenses are about 40% of our budget, meetings and programs about 47% of our budget. Our operating expenses are 8% of our budget, and fees and services about 5%. If anyone would like any more in-depth information about our budget, we'd be happy to provide that. This year, we're excited that we're nearing the completion of the revision of our previous publication called Owning Rural Lands. Many of you are familiar with that. We're very excited that this greatly expanded publication is almost ready, and it's called Caring for Land, Water, and Wildlife. It's a stewardship guide for landowners, community members, and visitors, and it will be available in 2021. I want to take a minute to mention a couple of special projects that are near and dear to my heart. First, our on-farm stewardship research and demonstration project, which was able to make leaps and bounds this season, even with all the challenges of this year. We had great success with studying biodiversity, soil quality, and water infiltration in the prairie strips. We studied bird-friendly grazing and haying. We studied cover crop establishment and grazing, and also row crop to pasture conversion in terms of water and soil quality. We're very excited about this on-farm stewardship research program and look forward to updating you in the future. A special note for our bird-friendly farming project, because we are having a bird-friendly bird-friendly beef meal tonight, thanks to the Rooted Spoon. Bird-friendly farming is all about adapting grazing and haying systems for nesting birds. First, adapting grazing systems to include nesting refuges so that birds are able to build their nests and raise their young and fledge those young in a refuge system. Also, adapting haying practices that protect bird nesting until after July 15th. And that also includes developing seed mixes so that the forage is of high quality, even though it's harvested later in the year. Also, we're developing markets for bird-friendly hay and beef, and Jason Vitas has done wonderful work this year on this project. Also, the larger initiative that we collaborate with, the Kickapoo Bird Habitat Initiative, is a project with VSN, Mississippi Valley Conservancy, the Kickapoo Valley Reserve, and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. We're working with landowners of all sizes to protect and enhance bird habitat. So whether you have a backyard or an acreage or a farm, there's something that we can all do to help support bird habitat. And with that, I will introduce Nan Marshall, who is our Membership, Communications, and Operations Coordinator. Thank you.
Good evening. I began working at VSN almost exactly 1 year ago, the day before last year's annual meeting. I have greatly enjoyed my year at VSN. Being part of an organization whose mission is to directly benefit the environment and the lives of people and wildlife in my immediate area is very satisfying. Previously, I had worked for several years in the environmental consulting field. We cleaned up toxic waste around the US and within Wisconsin, but I never had the opportunity to meet the people we were working for or to see the results of our cleanups. Working at VSN with a group of people who are passionate about their work is quite enjoyable. In my role as membership coordinator, I also have appreciated meeting and getting to know better the members of our greater community. We are a small but lively group at VSN, and I'm looking forward to celebrating VSN's 20th anniversary next year and showing our members how far this organization has come in that time. Now for a short recording that will talk about membership and communication efforts. As you can see from the quote on the screen from one of our members, collaboration is a big part of our work, and communication is an essential part of that between us and our members and amongst our VSN colleagues. We communicate through email, print, newsletters, our website, and social media. We also have opportunities to meet in person through our workshops and presentations, such as the ones that we have through Conservation on Tap. This year, we acquired a booth and can attend outdoor events like the farmers market. This year, we have 179 current members. 32 of them are brand new. Our goal for next year is to add 200 new members as part of our 20th anniversary celebration. We had 195 memberships and donations totaling $32,471. Each gift is acknowledged with a phone call from a board member. This year for communications, we had 12 e-news mailings, a print newsletter, which will come out in December. It was delayed due to COVID. It usually comes out in the spring. We are updating our website and have more changes ahead. We started our Connect to Protect Your Watershed campaign. We try to keep people current on happenings in each of 5 watersheds, the Kickapoo, West Fork of the Kickapoo, Bad Axe, Coon Creek, and Tainter Creek watersheds. And we have t-shirts that feature those watersheds and VSN pint glasses for sale. And we also started a new social media campaign with a new social media consultant. Our social media consultant is Carolyn Zick of Bad Axe Enterprises. She increased our Facebook followers from 700 to about 781. And we gained an Instagram page with 219 followers, all from having a consistent posting of 3 posts a week. Our offerings on social media include some of the latest VSN activities, updates on what's happening in all the local watersheds, helpful tips on what you can do for the environment, some downloadable activity sheets, and links to environment and nature apps, information about ecology and the environment, and other resources. This was the second year of our Conservation on Tap presentation program. It turned out to be a really big success. We had 5 presentations scheduled, but the fifth one had to be canceled. Several of the presentations had standing room only. Topics included trout, prairies, managed grazing, birds, and the changing landscape of the driftless area. We were able to videotape several sessions this year, thanks to Vernon Communications lending us their camera. And we've put links to those presentations on our website. And special thanks to Rooted Spoon for donating the space. We had 3 booth events this year, 2 at the farmers market and 1 at the sidewalk sales in Viroqua. It was really interesting to talk to people, and they had a lot of fun trying to figure out which watersheds they lived in. They also were curious about bird-friendly beef and hay. Many of the people were local, but visitors from outside the area were also interested in our t-shirts. I think they just really liked the interesting dendritic designs on them. Many were interested in the resources that we had available. We have reading lists, lists of activities in the different watersheds, information about the different resources that VSN provides and our services. And I'd like to thank Tom Lukens and Bob Jackson, board members, for helping me staff the booth, and my son and husband for getting up at 5 in the morning to help me set up the booth. Special thanks also go to our local business donors who help us a lot, and we are very happy to be part of the community here and all work together. And then in particular, special thanks to our major donors, Organic Valley and the Laird Norton Family Foundation. Up next is Danny Heisler-Wodel, our Regenerative Agriculture Outreach Specialist.
Of course, I'm the one that forgets to unmute, right? So good evening, everybody. I am Danny Heisler-Wodel, and thanks so much to all of you for joining us. As Shelley shared in my bio, my background runs deep in agriculture, and I'm appreciative that my role at VSN allows me to serve the area farmers and ranchers while focusing on water and soil quality. So with that, let's start my presentation, which is a little longer than the others. So I apologize in advance.
By chatting a little bit about the Tainter Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council and the successes through the year. I serve as in a support role to the Watershed Council by facilitating communications and outreach and education within the watershed area. So a little bit of background on the Tanner Creek watershed. The spans between Crawford and Vernon counties and is a sub-watershed in the Kickapoo. The Tanner Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council is a leader in conservation and is really striving to incorporate many regenerative practices to enhance soil and water quality. So beginning in 2016, the organization has worked to share innovative approaches to conservation and regenerative ag. Again, working to support the soil and protect the soil and water within the Tanner Creek watershed. We were astoundingly successful given COVID in 2020 and hosted 3 meetings early in the year where we hosted water scientists from the UW Stevens Point Center for Watershed Science and Education, where they joined us to discuss our well water testing results. We also were successful in developing, identifying, and selecting an appropriate logo that best identifies and encompasses all the opinions and work from our watershed, and work to kind of identify some locations on the perimeter of the watershed where we might want to place some signage with that logo. So as we got into the summer months, we hosted 4 pasture walks ranging from 20 to almost 50 attendees. So that was extremely exciting. The couple pictures on the right here both show, they're both images from our watershed pasture walks. We work with a few partners, Valley Stewardship Network works with a few partners to facilitate some of these regenerative and conservation programs. And so of course we have the logo of the Tanner Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council, and we work with the Pasture Project at the Wallace Center and our wonderful county partners at Land and Water Conservation, and also the DATCAP Producer-Led Watershed Council. So VSN, and particularly in my role, I really work to support a lot of the on-farm conservation and our regenerative practices to continue to reduce erosion, reduce phosphorus and sediment runoff, which Monique will chat a little bit about later, and increase our, through our reductions, we really work to increase our soil fertility and managing our water and soil quality. So we also facilitate water quality assessments, which Dave will continue to chat more about. The expansion of the regenerative practices that much of my work has focused on is, through the support for technical assistance, again, which really falls into Monique's wheelhouse. And then meetings and trainings, which has been much of the focus for 2020, where we've been able to host successful pasture walks, including industry professionals joining us and speaking. And then also really sharing our producer stories at these pasture walks and meetings, which is allowed for multi-generational engagement and really an inclusive environment for producers of all skill sets and duration in the industry. So we've been successful in the community outreach through print, radio, and academic presentations. In August, Barrett Froyland and I were invited to join WPR in an interview for the Farmer Council in the Driftless region, which is protecting the watershed and sharing new practices. So that really was exciting and kind of our first opportunity to chat a little bit about what we're doing here in the Driftless on a much wider scale. In September, the North Central Region Water Network invited me to join The Current, which is a once a month webinar where they host other university professionals and folks that are engaged in water-related research, where I spoke on the Grazing and Livestock Management and Water Resource Management webinar. And just recently in November, Grassland 2.0 Greener Pastures project invited me to speak to them about the present and future of agriculture in the Driftless region. We've been very fortunate through Gillian Pomplin's work at the Crawford Independent that she's done a beautiful job really sharing the Tanner Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council story through news articles like the 4 that are listed below. And probably, in my opinion, the most critical piece of the outreach that I've done is really that neighborhood and farmer engagement. So I was a member of the Tanner Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council before I joined VSN. My husband and I live in the Tanner Creek and farm in the Tanner Creek, and so it was really a fitting move for me to join in the coordination effort. So it's been a really easy conversation for me to have with my neighbors and friends in the area to just chat a little bit more about the work that we're doing and the support that we can provide. That outreach is also been developed really organically from farmers who have a longer tenure in the business, and communicating that to beginning farmers and other prospective farmers. And this is also what we're finding is developing into as farmers are considering land purchases or expanding their farm, they're starting to think in context of how to utilize some of the programs that we offer and funding opportunities to really make their farm more sustainable for them and really incorporate more regenerative practices, which is really exciting to see folks thinking, being that proactive. As I mentioned, over the summer, we were successful in hosting 4 pasture walks, each of them really different in the content that they covered, but super engaging. So in June, Brad Robson was kind enough to host us in his experiment, right? He was always very transparent that this was an experiment he was trying, but he was more than happy to have us out and understand a little bit about what he was doing. He was really focusing on having some variation in corn row widths. So he did some 30-inch rows and some 60-inch rows, and interseeded covers between, really with the intention of enhancing soil fertility, suppressing weeds, and then having a variety of late season forages for cattle grazing. So that was our pasture walk in June, and also during that meeting, we served some of Robson's homegrown beef, and that was a great hit. And what we kind of realized at that point was we need to be really honoring these farmers and serving the products that they grow. So that kicked off an unexpected and really enjoyable aspect of these pasture walks. In July, Driftless Organics and Josh Engel hosted us at the farm and allowed us to kind of all travel through and do a pasture walk where we looked at the variety of different vegetable crops he was growing and how he was incorporating those covers into his organic system, and what that, the benefits that he sees from that in terms of reducing tillage and also from a pest management standpoint, which is really, really neat. Not so much what we think in terms of the typical use for some of our covers. So it was great that he hosted us. As we got into August, the Ostrom family hosted us for just to stop out and take a look at what they had done in terms of some row crop ground converting into some perennial pastures. And that expansion in their grazing ground allows them to get more cattle out on pasture and reduce the amount of stored feed that they're feeding. And so in turn, reducing labor for them. So they're really excited to see this new system in place and the benefits that they'll gain from it. And in September, Brad Robson hosted us back again at the farm, where we were able to kind of go full circle with the experiment that he tried, and looked over the strips that he had, the different variations in corn, and then also a couple strips of field strips where he was trying some different small grains or cover crop mixes. And on the picture on the right here, what you'll see is Carl Delafield from Prairie Creek Seed, who joined us for this meeting. And he is in the soil pit, and all those flags are indicating just points of interest that were really impactful to us. So some of those are worm tunnels, root structures, and also where the organic layer ends, or the organic matter layer seemed to end. So that was a really insightful pasture walk, where we got a good look at what's underground, and we talked a lot about economics of the corn and covers that Brad planted. And we also had a presentation that shared with us the value of soil erosion and tillage practices. So as I've mentioned, one of the focal points for the Tanner Creek, and also much of the work that I do, is cover crop application. And it's so impactful because of, you know, many of the examples that I already listed from the farmers who have implemented it, but really, you know, in reducing erosion for the sake of enhancing water quality, right? And so some of the focal points that we have discussed and shared with farmers is just that that growth from the cover crops, as it comes up in the spring, that's allowing that soil to warm up quicker, allowing for the farmers to get in the fields earlier to plant their corn or beans. And that in turn lends itself to some potentially longer maturity crops, potentially allowing for greater yield in corn or beans, or it could allow for an earlier harvest, and that in turn allows us to get cover crops back in the ground earlier for more growth and enhanced soil benefits. So it's really a positive cycle, and it's just kind of having some of these conversations and encouraging it, and supporting those practices through the funding that is provided through the partners that I mentioned previously, and also really working to identify some alternative methods that work for our farmers, that you know, work with their cropping systems and some of their constraints, whether it's time or their own labor, or even just equipment to be able to apply it, right? So in this next slide, you will see an example of a very alternative method we tried in the Tanner Creek this fall. Here you can see a helicopter coming in quick, and that helicopter is actually holding a hopper below it that's an aerial seeder. So we're aerial seeding rye into standing corn. So the cool part is, now that the canopy on the corn has started to die down, that rye seed has the ability to infiltrate canopy, reach the ground, and ideally it's germinating before we're harvesting that corn, so that rye seed has the opportunity to kind of get a head start. So just a couple pictures that I wanted to share with you all from our rye planting this fall. And in the upper Midwest and kind of specifically Wisconsin, we really see a lot of winter rye utilized as the ideal cover crop here. It's establishes fast in the fall, as you can see from planting on September 1st until the rye was up. It was about 12, 13 days. And we had a week of very dry weather after September 1st. So it might have been a little quicker had we got some rain. But the rye is quick to establish. It's hardy. It grows quickly, as you can see through the next few pictures on October 6th and then October 24th. And so we have that green matter that's established. It's doing its job in terms of that root structure holding the soil. So again, in turn, enhancing water quality, but then it's also sequestering carbon, and it's really working to enhance the biodiversity of the soil and feed those microorganisms. So there's so many benefits to the cover crops, but it's really nice to kind of show some of these benchmarks as we go. And that is the grand recap of most of the work that I've done in the past 6 months or so. And I really want to thank all the members so much for your support and all the assistance and encouragement that you provide for us throughout the year. And up next, we have the magnificent Dr. Monique Hausman.
Thanks, Danny. Greetings, VSN members. Thanks so much for being with us this evening. And thank you for your service to all the veterans that are joining us as we just celebrated Veterans Day yesterday. Again, my name is Monique Hausman, and I reside with my partner, a couple cats, geriatric sheep in the Trout Creek watershed. My position as watershed planner started, like Nan, just over a year ago. It was a newly created position that developed from a public-private partnership between Valley Stewardship Network and Vernon County's Land and Water Conservation Department. So to complement our amazing team, this is really fun to see what you guys do. It's great. I'll enjoy this presentation tonight too. I bring to this work a passion for stewardship, particularly flood mitigation, recovery, and resilience, a social science lens as a cultural anthropologist, an applied research methodology toolbox, and geospatial technological skills. At least that's what I hope I bring. My work both at VSN and at Vernon County's Land and Water Conservation Department affords me a really unique balance of being able to do GIS mapping work and be socially interactive, which is a particularly meaningful, engaged opportunity. So I'm really honored to be part of Team VSN, and thank you for your membership that supports our work in this most special region. Please enjoy the following video that just gives a brief snippet of the work that I do here at VSN.
Hello again. My name is Monique Hausman. I am the watershed planner with VSN, and my efforts primarily focus on administering the Tana Creek Grazing Project that works with farmers, producers, and landowners who manage land in the Tana Creek watershed, which you can see on the map with Tri-County background. And working with folks to directly reduce nutrients and sediment through expanded adoption of regenerative grazing practices, whether it's grazing cover crops, improving existing grazing practices from continuous to managed grazing, but also converting cropland to pasture. This project is funded by Pasture Project and Wallace Center at Windrock International. And I can't speak highly enough about working with the Tana Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council members, both established and new. This watershed community is really innovative and practical, welcoming, and also totally enjoyable to be around and learn from. I am very grateful to work with these folks, but also have them as neighbors. So on this next slide, what is being shown is examples of a customary complementary map suite that we create for applicants. And so when someone is interested in applying for this cost share program, maybe Danny will let me know a little bit about them and their interests, and I'll contact them and follow up and see what they're interested in, see if it'd be a good match for them. And then the next step is to create this map suite, which in essence takes a look at the land of interest and produce images and maps that include an aerial image of the property. And then in that first map on the left-hand side, there's an inset map that lets us know where that land is located within the watershed. And then the next map, we include a layer of soil types, erodibility, and slope, and then a final map using LiDAR of the land, which is an acronym of light detection and ranging, which is in essence showing topography of the Earth's surface, like the slope and elevation. On this one here, I've also included contour lines. But this suite of maps is created for them and shared with them so that hopefully they'll gain different perspectives of their land in advance before proceeding. And then when they do move forward with the Tanner Creek grazing project process, perhaps it's with a wider angle so that the process is really rooted with a holistic outlook of the property before honing in on, say, one particular area or multiple aspects going forward. So we make sure that applicants receive this customary map suite, and in addition to that, then I schedule a time to come out with one of VSN's grazing consultants, Jim Munch, and I to go to the farm and we conduct what's called a whole farm assessment. And that's an opportunity for us to learn about what is it that this producer is interested in doing? What are they doing right now? What can be changed, or what is it that they're interested in doing? Where are the perhaps problem areas or areas for improvement? And so it really comes about out of a conversation. And then with that information, once we learn what it is that somebody's interested in doing or exploring what potential there is to do, I oftentimes have to make revisions on these initial maps that are provided if we're going to particularly hone in on one area and implement the projects, say, just a small portion of what they could do over time with this cost share program. And then I pass along that revised map and the whole farm assessment from Jim Munch over to our other VSN's grazing consultant, Dennis Rooney, who schedules a similar meeting to the whole farm assessment to do meet with a farmer and in a similar fashion, and he creates a complementary grazing plan for them should they implement these changes. Once we have that information, it's moving forward with looking at getting quotes to implement the projects, whether it be water lines or water tanks, putting in fences or renting equipment for that. And then applicants would also receive ongoing technical assistance with the VSN's grazing consultants through the life of the project. And I can't speak highly enough also about working alongside Jim and Dennis. One of the other components of this project is running some modeling to determine how much cost share someone would receive. So that is based on how much phosphorus savings they will have. So what I do is I use data collected from the Web Soil Survey website, which in essence looks at soil types, plug it into some formulas, run some modeling of baseline scenarios to future scenarios, and that gives us calculations to use for how much phosphorus savings there would be, as well as tons of soil that is saved. Moving on, the other realm of work I do at VSN is digital cartography. With a background in GIS, which is an acronym that stands for Geographic Information Systems or Sciences, depending on how fancy you want to sound. GIS is in essence a catch-all term for digital mapping. And in the work that I do at VSN, I work on organizing our spatial data library and our database of shape files, which is in essence the layers that we use in this mapping. I also often am requesting data and acquiring new data files. And other times I'm creating data and designing maps that may display information, be it points, lines, or polygons, sometimes using XY coordinates, or spatially displaying address points through a process called geocoding. The images on the slide just try to convey the fact that the maps that we create contain multiple layers. Given that this work I do doesn't accommodate for exciting action shots, I will just share some of the maps going forward that I've produced either for VSN staff or VSN members or the general public. Perhaps when we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Earth Day earlier this spring, you received a sampling of our custom mapping services that we offer by receiving a map of, say, your watershed, soil types on your land, an aerial or a LiDAR image. This was what we chose to do as a COVID-19 safe celebration, and it culminated into producing 67 maps. Continuing with that merriment of the night, gathering with our incredibly supportive VSN members, I decided I would produce a few maps for us this evening. So the first map that we're looking at here shows how far and wide VSN membership extends at a national level. So the blue dots that we're looking at represent VSN members for the past 4 years. And you can see we're on the East Coast, West Coast, obviously on the third coast. We're all over. That's fantastic. But I do need to make a disclaimer about this map. It is not 100% accurate, but that is because it does not show members who gave us, say, a PO box or didn't include a physical address in their membership. So there definitely would be more folks being shown in this. Nonetheless, VSN can be found in about a dozen states or so in the last 4 years. And although we might not be international yet, who knows what's in store for 2021? Perhaps we'll get there. In this next slide, with a more simple backdrop, we can see the locations of locations of members from 2020 only. And this time I'm representing members with VSN's leaf symbol rather than blue dots, just for some cartographic fun. We can see how we are distributed across the landscape again. And while we might not be in as many states, perhaps we have grown membership more locally. And to see what I mean by this, you can kind of see, looking at another scale of the same map. And when I was working on this, it got me thinking, you know, I wonder what local watersheds VSN members reside in. So in the GIS, I turned on a HUC 12 watershed layer, which stands for hydraulic unit code. HUCs 12s are the smallest USGS delineation of, in essence, a more local sub-watershed. And we can take a look at that here. So this is membership locations, a regional look at it, if you will, by HUC 12 watersheds. And it's a nice smattering of lovely colors, isn't it? So for some shameless promotion, you can see that same map locations of VSN members. But those that could purchase VSN watershed map t-shirts of where they reside. So maybe this map also shows us where we need to get other watershed t-shirt designs for those missing out. Moving on to my last map slide. We can do a little density analysis of the watersheds that we're affiliated with and see which ones are mostly densely populated with VSN members. And these with the dark blue color include Bishop Branch, the West Fork of the Kickapoo, and the Springville branch of the Bad Axe River, at least having 11 VSN members within them. More specifically, the West Fork and Bishop Branch each has 13 VSN members, but Springville comes in as the winner with a grand total of 14 VSN members. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed my presentation that provides a spatial perspective of the community we as VSN members make up. I appreciate being part of this VSN staff, and I am greatly appreciative of our VSN members and your support. I'm also grateful to be a watershed planner for our region. Next up, we will hear from our esteemed coworker, Dave Creer, VSN's Water Quality, Native Plantings, and Citizen Science Coordinator.
All right. Hey, everybody. This is Dave Creer. Glad you're still hanging in there. So I started at Valley Stewardship Network 2.5 years ago. My wife and I moved here 4 years ago. I had grown up on a farm near Spring Green, Wisconsin. Went to college at the University of Minnesota, went into the Air Force for 4 years, and then had a 25-year career in aerospace doing all sorts of different things. And then after we moved here, I was really fortunate enough that Tom and Shelly took a chance on me and said that a guy with some aerospace experience may be able to help us out. So I started out 2.5 years ago just doing the surface water quality work. And then over the last 2.5 years, that's expanded to include some citizen science and native plantings. So that includes a variety of different things where we're planting with native species, which I'm going to talk about here in the video clip that I've recorded, which we can start now. Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about citizen science, surface water monitoring, and native plantings for 2020. One of the things we did in 2020 is we continued our relationship in the public-private partnership of using goats and sheep for invasive species control. This is a partnership between Valley Stewardship Network, the Vernon County Land and Water Department, Friends of Vernon County Parks and Forests, and Vegetation Solutions, which is a company that owns the sheep and goats. Goats and sheep prefer the 4 worst invasive species we have around here: buckthorn, garlic mustard, wild parsnip, and honeysuckle. We help to train the volunteers with Friends of Vernon County Parks and Forests. And where we had most of our impact was at Hubbard Hills on the west side of Viroqua. And then they were also used at Sidey Hollow Park and Sophia Park, both county parks. We also did some pollinator surveys. We did a survey of a native prairie planting that we did originally in 2017. The first survey we've done here is in September of 2020, and we're going to do some follow-ups in future years. We used the Xerces Society protocol, and in 1 hour of doing the survey, we found 50 individual pollinators in 13 different groups and with 7 floral associations. So seeing a particular type of a bee on a particular type of flower. And this was in September, and so there wasn't a lot of stuff blooming, but it was amazing how many pollinators we were able to see on different flowers. We've also started soil health monitoring, and what we're doing is comparing the soil health in native planting strips, in row cropped fields, and in pasture or grassed waterways. So we're monitoring several different things. One of them is water infiltration rate. So by increasing water infiltration rates in our fields, we can reduce runoff. These pictures here are examples of how we do that. You take a steel ring, pound it into the ground, pour water in, then measure how fast that water can drain down through there. This graph in the lower left corner actually shows one of the sites that we did, a soybean field versus a grassed waterway right next to it. And it's a little hard to read the numbers, but basically by the time you get up to 2.5 inches of rainfall, a soybean field is 3 times slower than a grassed waterway. So another way to think of that is a grassed waterway can absorb water 3 times faster than just a regular soybean field. And that was just one data point, one day. So we'll be doing that more for several years and then comparing the results. Soil organic matter is another measure we're doing. So higher organic matter provides higher water holding capacity in the soil, reduces runoff, and then also increases water available to crops during dry periods. Bulk density, lower density, increases water infiltration and holding power, holding power. Chemical analysis and biologic activity both can improve fertilization efficiency, so farmers don't have to put as much fertilizer on. Our traditional water quality monitoring, in a non-COVID year, we would have had volunteers at around 40 sites. This year we had maybe 5 or 6 folks who continued to go out and take data, which was great. But no obligation to do that. And hopefully next year we'll be able to do more of that. We're also doing some more in-depth surface monitoring, mostly by VSN staff. You can see the different things we're doing: total phosphorus, nitrogen, a pretty in-depth macroinvertebrate sampling survey. We're also going back to sites that have historic data so we can compare water quality at the same site to maybe how it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. We're doing a lot of coordination with the University of Wisconsin. So the Jackson Lab has a project where they're measuring stream flow and nitrogen suspended solids at different sites in addition to the sites we're doing. And they're also doing year-round sampling. We tend to do ours generally between May and October, although we're going to add a little bit of winter as well. But we're going to getting great data from them and sharing data and they're helping us to understand what that data means. And then University of Wisconsin Stevens Point is really helping us understand how nitrogen is moving through the watershed from surface water down to well water, groundwater. And a big thing that we've done in 2020 is farming with native plantings. So far over the last 4 years, we have 14 different prairie strips, 3 different sites with stream bank stabilization, and 2 sites where we're putting in native plantings specifically for grazing. And this shows you those different sites. The blue dots are ones that we've already done. The yellow triangles are ones that we have planned already for 2021, and there'll be more. We're up to about 32 total acres installed, which is 1.5 miles of stream bank, and that drains about 420 acres. That's across all the different types of plantings that we're doing. And then we have some more planned for 2021, and for sure there's going to be more coming online. And just to show you a specific one, so this is a stream bank native sedge planting. So this is a mix that we specifically developed for use along streams that are used for trout fishing. It has very deep roots, so it should really hold during high water events, but it has a low height. It's not like a tall grass prairie that's going to be 4, 5, 6 feet tall, which is a struggle for fishermen to get through. This is much lower, about 2 to 3 feet tall. This is the same site. This June 2019, you can see is when we were doing planting. And then in October of 2020, that's me fishing along that same corner. And the mix has come in really, really well there. We have 3 sites right now with that, all with fishing easements. Billings Creek, Warner Creek, and Feeder Creek to Otter Creek. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Lukens, who is our chairman of the board. Thanks very much for listening.
Hello, folks, again. I have a recorded deal here coming up, talk about the board members. I sure appreciate your hanging in there. And when you think and hear about these board members, please consider whether or not you yourself might be willing to serve on the board. We're having 1 board member retire this year, and we need more board members. We have 7 now. We can have as many as 10 or 12. So if you have an interest, please let us know. And I think I'm gonna head off into the recording here now. Hello, folks. Tom here again. I'd like to introduce the Valley Stewardship Network board members. The first person is our vice chair, Nicole Panic. Nicole has lived in the area for 13, 14 years now and has had a decade of involvement with Valley Stewardship. At one point, she was a staff member and was very much involved in the Food and Farm Initiative. Nicole has an education in community development and leadership. And after her time with VSN, she joined Organic Valley, came back then as a board member, and uses what she's learned there at Organic Valley to help us. There are surveys on how to better work with folks in these home office situations or other protocols. She's been very helpful. And then the next is Joy Biddinghoff. Joy is our treasurer. Joy's a CPA. As you can imagine, having a CPA on the board of a nonprofit is really a fortunate thing. Joy does a lot of time, a lot of work for us. She has a degree in accountancy, and I grew up, though, on a farm in northern Illinois where they grew their own produce and livestock. So she has a land ethic that's been around for a long time. After she got her degree in accountancy, she worked in Chicago suburbs, but longed for the rural life and bought property here in Vernon County. They farmed on the weekends and then moved out here, started her own business, accounting and tax services on Main Street in Viroqua, and has got lots of stewardship efforts going on at her place. It's a managed forest program. It's really deep in her bones, the conservation land stewardship. So we're lucky to have Joy on the board. Deborah Behrens, another one we're lucky to have. I think Deborah's been on the board now 3-4 years. Has 20 years in nonprofit experience. She has helped nonprofits with their community outreach and support. Board development is something we need to work on a little more, and we'll look to her too for help on that. Recently, she's become executive director of the Prairie Enthusiasts, the folks that share our office on Main Street. She and her husband, Ben, live on the Bad Axe, and that's how we met. She came in looking for some advice, some stewardship advice, and we walked the property, and she thought the decent organization, and she joined us, and we're lucky for it. Next board member I'd like to introduce is Winston Ostro. He's a retired attorney, and here again, a nonprofit who's blessed with a retired attorney who helps us stay on the straight and narrow, keeps us from voiding our nonprofit status by doing something like a political endorsement or something like that. Winston's an avid outdoorsman, an avid trout fisherman, and as an attorney in the environment, a lot of it in environmental law. Winston has done a lot of pro bono work for the likes of the Isaac Walton League, the Nature Conservancy, Trout Unlimited. So his perspective has really been helpful, and Winston has recently agreed to become the secretary, as our secretary, the board member, is just leaving. So thanks, Winston, for all your help. Next is Joe Pedretti, and Joe is a fifth-generation Vernon County resident. He was raised on a small farm in Reedstown. He has a degree from University of Minnesota in animal science, and entomology, plant pathology. Joe's been an extension agent. He was an OV farmer outreach manager and organic specialist with Moses, and is now the outreach specialist with MOSA, Certified Organic Folks. So with Joe's background and his interest in sustainable agriculture, as you can imagine, he also lends a valuable perspective to the board. Joe's been on the board now too for a few years, and I keep mentioning this because I'm hoping there's somebody else out there who's listening and be interested in joining VSN board. We're in need of some new members. Speaking of new members, Bob Jackson is our most recently added board member. And Bob has his degree from Miami University of Ohio, and soon after college joined the Peace Corps, where he worked in Niger on water projects. And he did such an outstanding job that they asked him to actually stay on in Africa. He coordinated Peace Corps projects there for many years. In fact, all three of their sons were born in Africa. And then in '91, he left the Peace Corps and joined, actually became the director of AmeriCorps and the VISTA program, involved in the foster grandparent and senior companion programs. He moved to the Driftless area in 2010, where he's planted a lot of natives and native prairie, and he's involved in environmental and conservation-oriented activities quite extensively. And finally, we have a board member who's leaving VSN, Sarah Martinez. Sarah Martinez was on the board, then left, came back to the board now for 5 more years, and she's been the secretary and just decided that she needs to go on and will find herself involved in some other organizations. And thank you so much, Sarah. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being a part of this meeting tonight. We certainly appreciate it. A lot of you have been members for a long time, and hopefully there's some members out there that we might coach into joining us on the board. We're really fortunate here to have a lot of good members, a lot of informed people. We will be looking to new initiatives. You'll be hearing from us again with our newsletter soon. And next year, with our 21st birthday coming up, 20th was COVID and couldn't party, and next year we'll come of age, our 21st year, and we're going to have a major membership drive at that time. So please remember, you can put your questions in the chat box on the side here. And I'm going to open it up to questions now. During that time, Shelley and Monique will be handling those questions. So thanks again. We appreciate everything you do for us, and we hope to continue it for the next couple decades, at least.
Hi again, everybody. Shelley here. Feel free to put a question in the chat box. We are all here and able to answer your questions live. All the staff members are here, as you saw. I think all the board members are here as well. So please don't be shy if you do have a question. I just want to say how much we appreciate our stellar staff and board members. As you can see, we have a great team. They do incredible work. We're very proud of it and look forward to more in the future. And for that work, we thank you for all your support, for your membership support, your ideas, your stewardship activities at your home, whether it's on your land or in your yard. All your efforts help wildlife and water quality downstream. So we really appreciate everything that you do as members for VSN. While you might be thinking of a question, I have some quotes that I'd like to read from VSN members that were shared on our social media this year. One of them is from Cindy, who I know is on the presentation tonight, so thanks for being here, Cindy. Cindy writes, "Being the 7th generation of my family to live in this area, I have inherited a love for this area and feel a responsibility to take care of it. I am a member of VSN because I support their mission and vision of what could be." Thank you, Cindy. I know Cindy's family came from the Tanner Creek watershed and were some of the original family members, the Tainter family members. So it's really quite amazing for us to see historic pictures from Cindy's family from 7 generations back in the Tanner Creek watershed. I know another couple of VSN members who are on the presentation tonight, Chuck and Karen. Thank you for being here. And they write, "Collaboration. Valley Stewardship Network represents the best of the spirit of collaboration. They work with diverse groups in our community to further the goals of land conservation, erosion control, and promotion of sound land use practices." Chuck and Karen certainly demonstrate that on their land as well. So thank you for all your efforts. Any questions? Not yet. Okay, you guys are able, you're welcome to raise your hand if you don't want to put something in the chat box, and I think we're all able to sort of scan the crowd. If you're not sure how to use chat box, you could wave your hand and we'll try to get you that way. I'll just keep going while you think about that. Another quote from Mary: "I like the way VSN partners with farmers to improve water quality. My membership lets me have an immediate, direct impact on life here at home." Thank you, Mary. And one final member quote, and I know this is Sarah. She's on the call as well tonight. Thanks for being here, Sarah. "I find it most satisfying to support the organizations that are right in my backyard. Valley Stewardship Network has wisdom to share with anyone who's interested in protecting our area's precious land and water." Thank you, Sarah, for all your work in stewardship as well. Well, if no one has any questions, we will thank you again for listening to our amazing, what I would call science stewardship rock star staff. I'm so impressed with all of their work. It's pretty amazing and in-depth and very dedicated. And we look forward to more of this work. And we're always open to membership input. If there's a project that you're interested in, we're happy to have a conversation. Now that we're working a lot at home, we're happy to receive emails and give you a phone call back. And when our office opens again here on Main Street, we'd be happy to have you in for a cup of tea and talk about what you're interested in and what your conservation goals are.
Say, Shelley, we have a Robert that's raising his hand.
All right.
In future, you can call me Bob. It turns out there's a lot of Bob Jacksons in the world, so I've always signed my name Robert M. And at any rate, that's how it shows up. But that's not why I raised my hand. We had a board meeting not so long ago and wrestled with, in these unique times, how can we best support staff, and mindful that it's such a unique situation, particularly with all working from home. And it emerged that we had some pretty antiquated systems that we were expecting staff to be able to use productively. And it was impossible. The computers, et cetera, were quite old. And I'd just like to share with the members, I don't want to be premature, but the local Viroqua Lions met last night, the board, and we reviewed a proposal from Valley Stewardship Network for assistance in upgrading the computers for the staff. And I'm pleased to tell you that the request from Valley Stewardship, written by Dave Creer at Tom's suggestion, is approved by the board for $1,000. And because it's that amount, it has to go out to the membership for approval. But we've never ever seen the membership turn down something that the board unanimously endorsed. So normally I'd wait till it's fully approved by the Lion members, but this all relates to Tom and Dave coming out to a Lions meeting in January of 2020. And the members, the Lion Club members, were quite impressed with the presentation. And when the letter came now asking for help to upgrade the computers, many of the board members referenced that compelling presentation from last January. So this is the first I'm telling Tom and Dave. We just met last night, socially distanced in my garage at 40 degrees, which was quite interesting. But that's the news. Valley Stewardship Network members and board. So the Viroqua Lions are proud to support your work. And again, the check's not in the mail, but getting the members to approve, I don't want to say it's pro forma, but they've never overturned any unanimous decision made as a recommendation from the Lions board.
That's
I'm
awesome,
done.
Bob. Thank you.
Good. Well, we hope that helps the staff upgrade their equipment and, at any rate, make distance working a little easier.
We so appreciate that.
I'll go back to mute.
Well, thank you so much, Bob, and also to the Viroqua Lions Club. We are so proud to live in a rural community where community members come together, especially during times like these, to support each other and show how we as rural community members can be resilient and provide a positive future as such. We live in a special area, we have special community members, and I think the future is bright when we all pull together and show our grit and our grace in these times, and this is just a great example of that. So thank you so much, Bob. And the Lions Club. We have a couple of things in the chat box. Let's see, I guess a comment from Alicia. Most excellent to see how much the organization has flourished, and bird friendly also. That's so great, I love that. And Alicia, you've been a great supporter. We sure appreciate all your work in the community and your support of VSN over the years. Any other questions or comments? Well, with that, I think it's fun to see the dog there. um, all those of us who work on Zoom all the time, it's really a treat to see the cats and dogs and birds of Zoom that keep us entertained on our screen time. And certainly, it's been fun to see all of your faces tonight. Thank you for joining us from your warm, cozy homes. I think we've been able to have more folks on the call tonight than we have had sometimes in the past on a cold November evening. So we really appreciate your support. We appreciate you joining us. And please let us know if you have friends that would like to see the presentation. We will have it hopefully recorded and available. And so again, we invite you to just give us feedback and ideas as you wish through email or phone calls. And we wish you a beautiful holiday season and look forward to a bright 2021. Thanks, everybody.